Good day, it's Althea from the Bible in 1 year. Today we spend time in 2 Corinthians 12. Strength lies in weakness. The Jewish legalists or false apostles, as Paul calls them, were talking about themselves in an uplifting manner while talking down about Paul. Paul was not comfortable talking or boasting about himself, but felt the need to respond. Therefore, he talks about himself in the third person, sharing with them when he was caught up to the third heaven, paradise, where he heard things he is not permitted to speak about. Paul is somewhat confused about this experience, as he is not exactly sure what happened. Heaven is a place of spiritual things, while earth is physical things. What Paul experienced was so real that he had difficulty distinguish whether it was in the body or out of the body. This is not an isolated event in the Bible, as Ezekiel, John, and Daniel experienced spiritual encounters too. Therefore, it is common for God to reveal something and then close it up for a later time. Paul says in verse 5 to 7, he will boast in spiritual encounters because it is the truth, but will not boast in himself because this encounter has nothing to do with who and what he is. God is the only one who knows exactly what happened there, and God prevented him from sharing what he had heard. Paul carries on saying that he will boast about his own weaknesses. He can easily think of himself as great because of the extraordinary nature of the revelation. But to keep him from sharing it, he received a thorn in his flesh as a messenger to keep him from exalting himself. Paul makes the point to say it is easy to draw a crowd with sensational stories, but it is not so easy to draw the same crowd with stories about Jesus. This thorn really bothered Paul because he asked God 3 times to take it away. But God's response in verse 9 was to say, "No, my grace is sufficient for you. My loving kindness, my mercy is more than what you need. What's more, it is always available, regardless of the situation, for my power is being perfected and is completed and show itself most effectively in your weakness." In other words, it is not about you, Paul, it is about me, God. Normally, my grace is sufficient for you means unmerited favor, but in this context, it means to enable you and to empower you to be what God has called you to be, to do things you would otherwise not be able to do. In other words, God does not give us what we want, but what we need. Therefore, one needs to ask, how do I activate the grace that enables and empower? The answer to that question is weakness. The best way for God's power to work through us is to be kept at a place of weakness. At the end of verse 9, Paul says, "Therefore, I will gladly boast in my weakness, so that the power of Christ may completely enfold me and dwell in me." When we are weak, we become strong through the power of God that works through us. Verse 10 confirms this message. For the sake of Christ, when I am weak in human strength, then I am truly able, truly powerful, truly drawing from God's strength. Paul describes to them in verse 11 and 12, instead of being commended for the signs of wonders and miracles that were performed among you, even though I did not burden you with financial support, you have questioned my apostleship. Therefore, I have become foolish at a place of weakness again. Signs point to something that is true. Wonders are something that evoke wonder, and miracle is something that goes beyond normal. In verse 14 and 15, Paul says, I am ready to visit you for the third time, but to burden you in any way, but because you are important to me. I will spend my own resources and myself for you. Colossians 3:23 says, whatever you do, work from the soul. Put in your very best effort as something done for the Lord and not for men. In verse 16 to 19, Paul says, even if some of you gossip and spread inaccurate words about me, you are still my beloved, and my heart is to strengthen you spiritually. I wish to find that you have turned away from sin and turned to God. Whether sin you have committed, nothing will keep me from coming to you, and nothing will keep God from saving you. There is always hope. This reflects the heart of God. May you find the truth about your weakness. May the power of God be made perfect and complete and show itself most effective in your weakness. May you find the grace of God that enables and empower you to be what God has called you to be. Be blessed. Goodbye.